Welcome to the Marriage Puzzle Podcast with Julie and Thomas Hobby. We are marriage coaches who help couples with pain points about money, intimacy, and communication go from being overwhelmed to being secure in their marriage.
If this is your first time listening to us, thanks for checking out our podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and a review. Let's dive into this episode. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out another episode of the Marriage Puzzle Podcast. As you know, my wife and I have a little bit of craziness going on in our lives with our fourth baby on the way, who has decided that he's just gonna be a little bit of a troublemaker right now, and she is in the hospital awaiting his birth. And the last episode I recorded, I also had to say I'm not just letting her be in active labor over there while I'm over here recording podcasts. I will be there with her when the time comes, but the time is not here yet, so she's just waiting until she is in active labor. So, but I wanted to introduce you guys to some special guests that we have joining us to help us out with this tough time while Julie is gone. And we have Chris and Jamie from Expedition Marriage on with us. Chris and Jamie, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us. And just, because people always mess this up, I'm Chris, she's Jamie.
It can go either way, and it does quite often. So yeah, you definitely are in a tough season right now, being apart so long, and it's a little bit scary and all that. So hats off to you for holding down the fort with all the kids and running the house and being there for your wife, being there for Julie.
Yeah, we have some friends that we were just staying with, and she was going back to their other house for a week, and he was staying there on his own. And I'm like, I don't know how he does that. I mean, I would just pick up like a tray of lasagna and then just eat off that the whole week. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, we would. I know you've got to be missing each other like crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. We hit stretch last week that it had been 5 days since I was able to make it to the hospital to see her, and that was a tough stretch. So we kind of know like that's our maximum limit, and so we have to fit the time in between there. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on to help us out while she is out. I know she's listening in because she cares so much, but we figured it would be hard to get her on with all the noise from the hospital.
Yes.
So, whenever they need, some type of test for her or something, they just have to do it when it's time. The podcast recording doesn't matter at that point. So
I'm on air.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true. Well, we are happy to help you out because, we're all in this. Anybody in the marriage ministry field knows that we are all in this together, and there's no competition in this ministry. We need all hands on deck.
It's the work is plentiful. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. The harvest is
plentiful. Thank you.
The workers are few.
Yeah, exactly. That's totally true. And, we all know there's plenty of people that need help. And that's why we're making such an effort to try and still put information out there. We've been told it's okay to take a break, which I know is absolutely okay. And we probably will when the baby's born. But as long as we're able to, we want to actually still keep putting information out there because somebody someday will need something. And if they happen to pick it up and hear it, that's great. And so but on this episode you're going to be helping us to talk about the power of friendship in marriage. And so I've seen a lot of your posts on Instagram. I mean, it just looks like the two of you emit best friends from all of your posts. And so I couldn't think of a better couple to have on for this topic. And so when you guys mentioned it, I was like, that's the one. There's nothing else that works. So tell us a little bit about yourselves. Let our listeners get to know a little bit about the two of you and how you got started. I know a little bit about your background, but for anyone who doesn't know of you yet that's listening to our podcast, tell them about you guys.
All right. Well, we're Christian counselors and marriage coaches. We have our online ministry, Expedition Marriage, and you can find us at expeditionmarriage.org. And from there, you can find our podcast, which is Expedition Marriage with Chris and Jamie. We try to keep it simple.
It's all Expedition Marriage. You search that, you'll find us.
Yeah. So and we have a big presence on Instagram at expedition_marriage. And so, in our podcast, our Instagram website, courses, and our book. We have a newlywed couples devotional, which actually, it's fun because somebody had sent us or tagged us that they found our book in a bookstore in Colorado.
Yeah, a Barnes and Noble, Colorado bookstore.
Yeah.
It's like, that's always exciting because, we're doing all these things and have this ministry, but we're just like you were saying, we're just best friends.
Oh yeah.
We're best friends, we're counselors, and we have a heart for Jesus
Yeah.
and a heart for helping couples. And so we love collaborating with couples like you and
Mhm.
providing all these resources to give information out there.
Yeah, like you're saying, so that way people have access to resources. They have
Mhm.
access to something when they're needing help. And that's one of the reasons why we kind of started. We had the private practice, and we still do
Mhm.
have private practice, which is just all online now.
Yeah.
But it was just so difficult and challenging doing, one couple at a time,
Mhm.
one couple at a time. And we really felt like we're fighting a forest fire with a squirt gun is what we tell people.
Mhm.
And we thought, how can we try to get in front of this? How do we, reach more people with the message of, of what God wants for their marriages? Because we're just seeing the bodies suffer at the same rates as the world, right? And that just wasn't right. It wasn't it wasn't sitting right with us.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what can we do to help, not, just reach those people who are hurt and, are suffering, and also try to get in front of some of those people so that way we can try to help stem
Mhm.
them from going, off.
Right.
Yeah, we like to joke around, kind of like when that check engine light starts blinking,
Yeah.
to get help then, not wait till you're, off in the ditch and burst into flames.
Right. And that's, a little part of our story is we weren't believers
Mhm.
when we got married.
Okay.
And so, and we talk about friendship, that was pretty much kind of all we had.
Yeah.
That was what we had. And I think it was
Yeah.
foundational.
People was always said, "Oh, we love how much fun you all seem to be
Yeah.
having all the time."
Yeah, but
Mhm.
not being believers. And, I came from a very dysfunctional family. And when we got married, we had all kinds of issues. We had all kinds of problems. And so we've been on our own journey of learning how to work those out, following the Lord, growing in Jesus,
Mhm.
and applying things to our marriage. And our friendship was foundational for that and kind of helped move those wheels forward.
Yeah.
But really, for me and where we became counselors at is, I did grow up in that dysfunctional home and I didn't have any resources.
Mm.
I didn't have anybody helping me. I didn't have any guidance. And so at a very young age, I knew I wanted to be this people helper. I wanted to be somebody who helps others and to make sure that nobody has to go through that kind of dysfunction and that kind of pain alone.
Mhm.
And so when you flash forward to us becoming believers and starting this ministry and opening our private practice, we were seeing individuals, and I saw a lot of youth and things like that. But what we found was that everybody we were seeing, they all came from broken families.
Mhm.
They all had parents who were divorced and families that were broken.
Mhm.
And so at a certain point, we just reached where we decided, we've got to get ahead of this problem.
Mhm.
We've got to get proactive here instead of using the squirt gun, like you said, to put out all these fires. And that's kind of where Expedition Marriage came from. That's where we took our private practice and just cast our net wider, because there are so many couples out there who aren't friends, who aren't communicating
Mhm.
well, who are in
Yeah.
massive debt and not connected and all of that.
Running around taking care of all this business of
Mhm.
a family
Yeah.
and neglecting
Their
their
marriage.
marriage,
Yeah.
the friendship.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned about the dysfunctional family upbringing, do you see quite a contrast of how difficult it is to be friends in marriage if that's kind of your upbringing and that's kind of your outlook or your view on marriage? If it was just dysfunctional growing up, how much more difficult does it make it to become or stay friends in marriage?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. We like to tell people that most of your relational issues started before you got in a relationship.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it's a true statement.
Yeah.
But one of the research studies that came out, this has probably been at least 10, 15 years ago. It was a longitudinal study. So it was over a long period of time. Sorry. And so to your listeners, because they're going, I don't care what longitudinal, just tell me speak English to me, Chris. but so they study people over decades of these kids who grew up in families of divorce, and they saw that what initially like, oh, the grades are dropping and they're having issues and all that, but look, after a couple of years they're getting better and they're resilient. Look at how resilient kids are, and they are. They're and God can absolutely redeem. But what was interesting and being found out is then once these kids got married, then there's this what they call the sleeper effect. And so all this distrust and these insecurities and fears
and triggers is the common word now is triggers.
They would come to the surface. And so we would actually hear people kind of like, look, my parents got divorced after 30 years. So, and I know we're 3 years into it, but why wait? Why stick
I don't want to
out
suffer for
30 years. Let's just cut our losses now.
Right. Yeah. Wow. And so and if there's not a friendship, you can also go the other extreme, and people will get, if they're not Christ focused, if they don't understand that it becomes all their marriage is about them.
Yeah.
And so 100% of the time, I need my husband, my wife to be making me happy. It needs to be constantly fun. We need to be constantly connected. And when we're not, well, that doesn't mean, fix it. Let's repair it. Let's work on this. Right. What it means to a lot of people is he's not my soulmate. I married the wrong person.
Yeah.
And then they're out. And so if you don't have that proper perspective of what marriage really is about, and if you don't have that modeling of that God-centered home, you have no idea. The people we see as counselors, they're coming at us from a place of never being taught coping skills. Yeah. They don't know how, and we live in a society where we're all about numbing out. We're drinking, we're watching pornography, we're checking out, we're, overspending, we're escaping
on devices, whatever it takes to not have to deal with the issues at hand.
Right. And that's our responsibility as parents to model things well for our kids so they do know what a healthy God-centered marriage looks like, because it's teaching them skills. And what we're showing them, what the home they're being raised in, they're learning their skills. They're learning how to do life and handle hard things through us.
Yeah, well, we're told, to raise up your children in the way they should go. It's not just, it's about, religious and their relationship with Christ, but there's also a reason we don't just throw the kids out in the backyard with the goats and the chickens, right?
Right. Yeah, they are meant to learn something from us.
Sure. And even looking at it from that point of view, kids, there's one aspect of raising kids that is do what I say, and there's another aspect of they're just going to absorb what you do, and if they're absorbing the negative stuff or that dysfunction, that's what's going to show up later. And so so you have to be really focused on yourself, not in a narcissistic type of way, but focus on getting you correct first, so that what you are putting out there, what you're putting on display, and then how you can work on your marriage translates properly to your children, which is a huge deal. And we're even seeing that with our kids a little bit as they start, and you see that not just from parenthood, but you see that from other influences in your kids, the kids they go to school with, who's in their class, and kids just pick up on little things and you don't know where it came from. And so heaven forbid a negative thing comes from you, like you never want to set your children up with that. No parent wants to do that. So I love that thought process. One of the things that came to mind while you were talking about that was what about do you feel that there's a kind of a fine line to walk of not falling towards a stale friendship versus not getting too over dependent on each other as you only the two of you are able to be friends? I mean, this aspect of we versus me, and I think that there needs to be a balance, right, of we time as a couple, but also me time. How do you balance both of those, trying to not go stale, but also not being too dependent just on your spouse?
Sure. No,
right. And that's a great question for this day and age after we've come out of the pandemic. And I think we're out of the pandemic. I don't even know anymore.
They said they're maybe not, track. I don't know.
But with all that isolation, that's one of those things that there are a lot of couples that are really struggling to get back out there
Right.
and to do things because they've, crawled in this hole of just one another. And for some couples that did not work out well at all. And it, increased divorce by 34% since, March of 2020. And that's a lot. But for a lot of couples, it just became, you know what, here's our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
We're fine with just you and I. And the truth is, a solid, healthy friendship will encourage one another to go out and have other friends. I want, as his best friend, I want him to become all God made him to be, which means I want him to be using his talents and his gifts and, fulfilling some desires he has, the things that he enjoys and loves. And I want to make space for that. And best friends, real best friends, should not hoard one another.
Right.
And we need to know, because else we'll start losing a part of ourselves.
Yeah.
And what makes the healthiest marriages is two healthy individuals, that are fulfilling their roles and both surrendered to Christ and doing what he calls them to. But we need those things. And scripture is very clear that we also need one another. And just like we're doing now with you and Julie, it's like, hard times right now. Well, here we come. Let us be there to come alongside you and help you guys out as well. And it's the same thing in our outside friendships. We need one another. And there's a lot of people out there, his friends, my friends individually, that need us too. And if we're just keeping it to ourselves, the world, the body of Christ misses out.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things too, because that's actually a tendency for couples when they first get together, they'll be like, oh, we're so much in love. We just want to spend every second that we can with each other. And, which is great. But yes, we want to keep a balance. As Jamie was saying, it's two healthy individuals become one. That's the miracle. That's how God has designed that. So that we want to have a we-ness. And there, as far as a fine line, I say if you cross a little to the far side, as far as being, kind of a little overly connected, that's probably better than the other side. Because, if something's upsetting Jamie, then I want to be to bother me too. Right. I don't want to be, that happened to you. Wow, too bad for you.
Going out with the guys.
Yeah, see you. Yeah. You're right. So there's that's where some empathy. So as far as living life shoulder to shoulder together, as far as having each other's back, right? Those kind of things. How are we going through this together? But as you're saying, and one thing actually I've told Jamie before, I'm your best friend, but I'm not your girlfriend.
And there is a difference. He does not want to hear the things that I need to be telling my girlfriends. There is a big difference.
And vice versa. I need, men friends. I need men friends, male friends, who and guys need, iron sharpens iron, right? To be around other guys who are willing to lovingly smack me in line when I need to be, kept in line, right? For that accountability. Right. So, to say the tough things, to share the tough love that men need to be sharing with other men. Not to mention, we need couple friends.
Yeah.
And we need those other friends who are couples who are trying to do it well. Look, we're drawing breath. We haven't arrived. Right. So we're trying to find those who are, I don't know, just maybe it doesn't even have to be running buddies as much as just people who are trying to do it well. We can learn from each other, have accountability, have people willing to get invested in each other's lives, as Jamie was saying, to build each other up, to make sure that no one falls off the radar. When they're having problems, they're able to go, hey, look, you haven't been around a while. Is there something going on? We need to know. Should we be praying for this? Because you're not going to slip away quietly without telling anybody that there's problems. And the next thing we know, you're splitting up. And we never had a chance to even pray for you.
Right. I think if you are, if you're, one of the things you mentioned was when couples are newly married, they want to be around each other so much, and I think there's that aspect, the infatuation, the Twitter-pated, the heartbeats coming out of your eyeballs type of love when you first get married. But I think that there can also be an aspect of, especially in young married couples. My wife and I got married. I was 20, she was 19. And so there's, I think, a whole aspect of it's us against the world. Like everyone
Mhm.
doubts us. Everyone says you're too young. And so I think there's a certain demographic of married couples in a certain age group that
Mhm.
don't have much life experience. We didn't, but we were like, all right, link arms. It's the two of us. We're gonna knock this out. And that can also, in some ways, inadvertently cause a barrier to go up between you,
Mhm.
the two of you, becoming friends with other couples or other men
Mm.
or other women, respectively. And so I think that that's a um, something that I would say, especially younger couples, need to
Mhm.
be aware of as they get married. Um, I I would. I mean, we got married when we were young, so I can't speak for anyone else, but I feel like if you get married in your late 20s, early 30s, you've got more life experience and you're probably
Mhm.
not going to have that it's us against the world kind of feeling. Um,
Right.
because people expect that at that age. They expect you to be married, and that's kind of the life stage they're expecting you to walk into. So you talked about couple friends, and through our coaching, one of the things that every couple we've seen so far has seemed to struggle with, and granted, we've started our coaching in the last year, so really coming out of COVID. And so I think that
Mm.
Mhm.
partially a byproduct of that, like you mentioned earlier, is that they all want more couple friends, and they're
Mhm.
Mhm.
struggling. And my wife and I are in a similar boat. We recently moved cross country, and so we're trying to generate
Mhm.
those new friendships as well. And so how outside of church, I mean, we go to church, and you guys are Christians, so that's a great community to find more couple friends.
Mhm.
But where are some other places, or what are some other things that you can do to kind of dig up those friendships that you can find, and be trustful friendships?
Mm.
Because
Mhm.
you can get into friendships that really impact you negatively if you're not careful, really
Mhm.
impact your marriage negatively if you're not careful. um, Sometimes we don't know that up front, but would you have any suggestions for listeners who might be looking for that?
Yeah, well, I think
That's a great question.
yeah, and I think the problem is so many couples, they want friends, and we're all saying we want to have more friends, we want
Mhm.
couple friends, but we're all sitting around waiting for those friends to come up to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And stuff, and so we're
Mhm.
even going to church and waiting, well, I don't feel like I fit in there. Well, what are we doing to place ourselves
Okay.
in there? And
Mhm.
so if
Yeah,
you're
nobody comes up to talk to us.
right,
Are you talking to people?
and that's the thing, and if you want couple friends, you need to take responsibility for that.
Okay.
And I think some of the
Mhm.
great friends we've made along the way is we've had book studies at our house.
Mhm.
We've gone through a Bible study, one that's conversational, one that's maybe designed just for couples, or one that's just like fun to go through. And you just open it up and you just invite people. We have friends who do like supper clubs, and it's very easy to do, and you
Mhm.
don't have to be gifted in hospitality. And we would have people at our house all the time for food, for dinner, but I'm not a chef. We're not doing it. You're going to get paper plates and burgers on the grill,
Mhm.
and we're going to hang out playing games in the backyard.
Okay.
And that's another thing. Our oldest daughter and son, they are great game players. Like that's what they love. And they invite people
Mhm.
over to come have a game night. And so you kind of figure out the things that you enjoy. If you do like games,
Mhm.
then invite couples to play games. There's, in our town, there's like local kickball rec games. And so couples are going out, and our daughter and
For big people.
yes, our daughter and son-in-law also did that. They're both big extroverts, always
Mhm.
doing fun community things, but they posted on Facebook, having a family kickball game, meet at this park at this time. And they lead. If you
Mhm.
want couple friends, you need to take a leadership position.
Okay.
And you need to do things instead of just sitting back waiting for them to come to you, because else we're all just waiting for somebody to come and invite us.
Oh yeah. Well, look, one of the oldest tricks in the enemy's book is to divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Right. To get us isolated, and then we're easy pickings, or we don't
Mhm.
have the power that we have in community.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so, yes, a church is a great place to find community.
Mhm.
It's harder to, outside of that, especially, maybe in the work environment, it's harder to find people who might be somewhat
Like-minded.
like-minded. That's a challenge. I like to joke about, the lesser talked about miracle of Jesus, a man in his early 30s who had 12 close friends.
Right.
You know, it's because and for guys, it does actually tend to be hard, right? And I mean this as a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, our wives, they'll stand in line at, you know, at Starbucks or at a store or something like that, and they'll like meet friends and like, oh, we should go get coffee, or you should come over. I'm doing a book study, come on over. And if we're like, as guys, I know there's something that's wrong with us, probably, because we, you know, quote unquote, can't do that. Like if I'm talking to, I might look, there's very few strangers that I've met, especially in a line where they're captive audiences. So,
or an elevator,
So, you know,
befriend you in an elevator.
yeah, so I will start a conversation there there will be witty banter. But apart from that, though, I'm not going to go, hey, you know what? We've been having a kind of good time, you know, checking out, you know, in the groceries. Why don't we go grab a coffee? I just, we probably should be able to do that. You know, hey, can you give me your number? Let's, you know, what's your, you know, your Instagram? Right. I'll DM you. But maybe our wives might be better at doing that and going, hey, you know what? We're doing a couple book study. Why don't you ask your, you know, your husband? And so if we're kind of stink at that, or that's not our strong suit, whoever's the strong suit that is,
right,
let them do it,
because we're not supposed to be, you know, divided. And, you know, I'm going back to what you were saying, Thomas, about like when we first get together as a couple, and, you know, we have that, it's known as the love cocktail, right? All these great brain chemicals going on, and it's connecting us. Yeah, we're being bonded, we're connected, we have all the endorphins, it feels good. Yeah, and that's why so many couples get married who probably shouldn't, because all those chemicals let you pass up some red flags. You can overlook them, but those chemicals fade away. So they're only there like a year and a half
or 2 years.
Yes, up to 2 years. And then they start dying away, because we need other people. We need deeper things, and just like surface connection.
We need more than writing on emotions. We need to put things into action. We need to develop deeper connections, that take us further than just, you know, the pitter
all
patter,
the feel good
and the eyeballs, you know, the hearts throbbing out of the eyes.
Yeah.
That's great. I love all that. I want to circle back to the stale friendship for a couple minutes here. A lot of couples probably go through lulls in their relationships where, you know, something just gets off, and you know it's off, but you don't know why, and you can't figure it out, and you know you're going on dates, but you're just going through the motions and things like that. You just kind of lose that connection. How do you work back from that stale spot in your relationship? And you know, one thing that Julie and I have always thought about was just kind of remember your why. Like think back to the memories of before that, and kind of try and bring those back forward. But do you have any other thoughts around that, coming back from a stale spot?
Well, it's going to involve intentionality.
Yeah.
And so the foundational thing is openly identifying and discussing the fact that we're not where we want to be. Or even if it's one of you, I'm not where I want to be. I miss us.
Right.
I miss the fun. I miss the friendship. And there's no way, especially, you know, if you go from dating to newly married, and then you've got some kids in the mix and all that, you're not going to get back.
There's seasons. Yeah.
You know, maybe when you're empty nesters one day, you know, far down the road. But so you have to be realistic about the state and the season that you're in life. And so you don't want to be, you know, married with 3 kids and missing all that you did when you were first dating. That's not realistic, but you do want to identify, we have an issue here and I want us to be friends again. And so it's going to involve intention, and it's going to involve investing quality time.
Yeah.
You have to make room for it. You have to decide, you know what, whether it's once a month, once a week, whenever it is, we are going to start doing something fun. And that's one of the things. And if you're going to try to establish the date nights again, you know, when you attach fun to a new habit, you are so much more likely to do it.
Okay.
And so going back and making time for those date nights intentionally, and even just communication. Communication, healthy communication will reconnect you.
Yeah.
And that can be done. You know what? Kids go to bed every night. I'm going to meet you on the porch. We're going to have some decaf. We're going to have, you know, whatever. And we're just going to talk.
Yeah.
And you've got to make the shift from not making everything so business, family, goal related. It's not the running of the household. You don't, because without friendship, that's the difference. Without friendship in a marriage, you are in a business partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is very different. So
very task oriented. It's not relational.
Right. So you have to make time, you have to communicate, and you have to make sure you're not communicating business things.
Right.
And add fun. You've got to have fun. There's so many bonding benefits, and the endorphins and all that, and just the likability factor you develop again, because you lose that when he's just the guy coming home from work, helping me bathe the kids and do all that. That's not going to bond me to him. But when he's the guy who does that and then comes and takes me to sit on the porch and go, hey, how was your day? What's going on in your life? Now there's some real likability going on.
Remember to ask about their inner world. Yeah, because like you're saying, it's the guy who comes in. It's almost like I'm the assistant versus I'm the spouse. We're not getting face to face and talking to each other anymore. If we're talking, if we're in the same room, it's across the room. It's while we're going from task to task. It's
and it's also so much. Our heads are down on our phones.
Oh yeah,
so much. And so that would be for sure a tip I would throw in there. As much as you can, when you're walking in the door together, when you're home together, put your phones in a basket, leave them in another room. You would be surprised how much you're missing out on just by having a phone giving you easy access to avoid your spouse and just scroll mindlessly.
Escape. Well, again, because you're talking about just little things, like you're saying, making that time when you come home a big deal to reunite. Something as little as that can have a big impact on a marriage. Just for example, telling couples who tell each other good morning on a regular basis, which you think is no big deal, live on an average 5 years longer than couples who don't.
Wow.
So if right. So these little things can make huge impacts on the relationship. It reminds you, hey, I missed you. There's a part of me that longs to be close to you, and I wanted you to know that when I'm not with you, I'm not fully right.
Right.
And so so I've got to make it past the kids and the dog and all that. And so they hand off and let's reunite. Let's give each other a hug. Let's give each other a kiss. There's stuff going on. And I mentioned this before, we become very task oriented. When we're task oriented, which is left brain, then we're not relational, which is right brain. And they flow goes from right to left. So it starts in relational and then goes to task. Well, if we're always in task, because then it doesn't go reverse. So if we're always in task, then then we're not relational. When we're not relational, bad things tend to happen. And we have to do something intentionally to circle back up to become relational. Like having fun, like doing something. So if we're going to have a date night, make sure it's something that Jamie said was something fun, not just watching a movie where we're not engaging.
Right. There's benefits to that. But if you're trying to reestablish that friendship and that connection, then that's not where you want to start. You really want to do something fun. And, there's been surveys done, and 80% of couples that have divorced say that they grew apart and they lost connection.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is a big deal. And then all the research that's been done with couples who have, longevity in their marriages, where they've been married for a long time, they cite the number one reason that they say is that my spouse is my best friend. Which is, these are couples, what works, what keeps their marriage together is we are best friends. And a lot of the reasons why couples are divorcing always include, it may not be the reason they're divorcing, but included is the fact that we grew apart. So we stopped investing in our friendship. We stopped getting to know one another, and we stopped spending time together, and we just lost connection because we just always were running the house and going to work and doing our things, and we weren't connecting. So friendship and keeping that going in your marriage is a giant deal.
Fun is huge. It plays such a big role. I was thinking, because you all interviewed Brad and Lisa, some close friends of ours, in the marriage world, unrelenting pursuit. I always say that wrong.
I know.
But part of, one of the things that was mentioned, not on the podcast, but because we were talking at one time, and somebody had kind of asked, well, how do you not, fall into that and all that, like what would keep you from doing that? And I'm thinking, my wife's my best friend.
Yeah.
I'd never do that to my best friend.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah, you're talking adultery, their testimony of adultery.
Right. Yeah. So how do I stay faithful? How do I stay connected? Because we treat our friends and differently than we do our
Mhm.
assistants or our partners and all that.
Yeah.
And especially our best friends that we want to, share things with and be connected with
Mhm.
and to live life together with.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So true.
totally. Totally. I mean, I love everything that you guys are saying, and you guys are speaking my language with the data and the percentages, like that all hits home for me.
Awesome.
I love when when there's actually, something to back it up. I mean, we can sit here and
Yeah.
say this all day, and people know that they need to do it. People hear that they need to do it, and they're like, okay, yeah, I should try that. But then when there's like data, there's some facts that really can
Mhm.
help to drive it home. 80% of people said
Yes.
they grew apart. And it's something that we can sit here and say, and we're like, you know what, that's simple to
Mhm.
not allow to happen, but it's not
Mm.
easy. Like it's a
Right.
simple thing to stay together. Like, you need to do it, but it's not an
Mhm.
easy thing. You have to be intentional, and
Yeah.
intentionality is that part that's difficult. To be intentional, to create a habit is going to be difficult. And Julie and I have talked about this on our podcast before. One of the things that we do in terms of talking and staying in communication, because when you have kids running around, uh, when they're awake, it is survival mode, and it pretty much
It,
has to be task oriented. And it's just, okay,
yes.
we have to get from point A to point B, wake up to bedtime. Like that's how it has to go.
Yes.
But
Yes.
when that's over, you have to go back to your spouse and figure out what the two of you have missed throughout the day on a
Mhm.
relational level. And Julie and I do something. We actually share a note in our phones, because that way we can just write down topics like, oh, I want to talk to my wife about this today. And
Mhm.
because in all of the chaos with kids running around, or even if you don't have kids, just your busy work schedules and coming
Sure.
home, whether you have kids or not is somewhat irrelevant. Um, you'll forget what you want to talk to them about. And
Yes.
once you get on the mindless scroll, you're gone for the night. And so
Yep.
Mhm.
we love that talk list where we just throw the topics on there, and we can just say, we've got time that's going to be
Right.
uninterrupted. What do we want to talk about? And we just roll through the list, and we'll get off topic, but it gets the
Mhm.
ball rolling. So if you're in a spot where you're trying to rebuild that communication, that's something that we always strongly suggest, is start writing down the
Mhm.
topics you want to talk about, and just go to that. If you ever feel like you're in a spot where we don't know how to start the conversation, there it is. It's already been written down for you. So I think that's a huge benefit that anyone could utilize. So
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
I
is
like
a
that.
great idea. But as you're saying that, I'm like, okay, now we're going to sound really old with what I'm going to add to this for our generation. One thing that we would do, we're building a house right now, so we have everything in storage. But one of the things that we've always done is we've each kept little notebooks.
Mhm.
He's got his notebook, I've got mine,
Sure.
and we would just write encouraging letters to one another, just like, hey, I appreciate you doing this. This was great
Mhm.
that you did today, or I just love you, and whatever my thoughts are,
You
whatever
rock.
I want to tell them, I would just write it in the book, and then I would leave it on his pillow,
Mhm.
or go
Mhm.
put it on his seat in the car. And I mean, no, rules or anything with it.
Mm.
It was just when we felt that we wanted to share that. And so it was a great way that, I don't have time. The kids are always, hanging on you and all of that. But that's a great way to just write something down, to still say, I like you, I love you, and you're important to me, and I care about you. And I'm taking 5 minutes to write in this book
Mhm.
for you to receive that.
Mhm.
Because life is hard. And when you're outnumbered with kids too, it's it is survival mode.
Like zone defense.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's some part of that that can be translated to text messaging back and forth, but there's something
Right.
different about, I'll say, the analog version of what you're saying. And
Yes.
um, there's just really something different to writing something down with a pen
Mhm.
and a paper. And if you know how to write in cursive, that could be a
Yes.
whole different ballgame,
That's right. That's
Um,
right.
but there's something to that extra thought, that tangible,
Yeah.
you can give someone and say, I made this for you. I stopped everything I was doing, because we can all use Siri or Alexa or someone to
Yeah.
send a message for us, but then that takes the personal part out of it to some extent. The words
Mhm.
can mean true, but when you can give something that's actually tangible, they can pick up, they can feel it, they can read it,
Yes.
more of their senses can actually uh, interact,
absorb
it, is I love that idea. And it's just something about, I mean, honestly, I really struggle. My wife is words of affirmation love language, and it is, we did an episode on the 5 love languages, and words of affirmation is a 0 for me, like on my love, absolute 0. And so it's really difficult for me, but I've been trying to work on it for her. She loves it when I buy her cards, but I'm a financial guy, and so spending
cards are $7.
I'm like, I can't do it. So, but something like that, we've got paper around the house, I can just write a note. And so I love that it's not about the prettiness of the Hallmark card that you buy, or it's about the thought that really comes out of your heart to them, and taking a moment to actually out of your day where they can know you thought about them enough to actually go out of your way to do something like this. People listening, take this piece of advice here. I love this, because just sending a text message is good, but taking it an extra step with what Chris and Jamie have said, and writing a note is by far even better.
And the one other benefit that comes with that is we're trained text messages, they're fast. Like we're, abbreviating everything, and, 2 letters have different meanings and all that. It's just quick. And so our brain is trained differently when we're texting. When we stop and slow down, then we get that heart connection. It even reduces anxiety for us because our brains are running so fast. But when you're writing, everything kind of has to slow down. So you're mentally, it's great for your own mental health to pause and to share some of that. But as you're writing out everything that you're appreciating about your spouse, you're not just going, here's a heart emoji, here's this, boom, thank you. You're being intentional, and you're writing it down, and your own heart and mind is being transformed. You're remembering, man, this is a good man I married. Gosh, I can't wait till he gets
this
home.
Is why I love them. This is why I like being around them.
Which that is a big benefit you will get from writing.
So what if they do, if they leave their socks on the floor?
That's right. They're so funny. They're so great. Yeah. So another perk to that.
I love that. And I just want to flip that the other way from the reader's perspective for a second, from the receiver's perspective.
Yes.
From a digital receiver, you have 4 inches of a screen, and then it disappears. Once you send 3 or 4 more texts, it's gone. It's out of your sight. You're never going to go back to it and see it again. But that tangible note will last a lot longer. And
it's not sandwiched between, can you pick up milk and did you bathe the kids? Or where are the kids?
Exactly. Exactly. I love it. Well, Chris and Jamie, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I wish Julie could have been here. Circumstances didn't allow that, but we will have to do this again once she is back on the podcast with me, because it was a blast having the 2 of you on. And so I just want to reiterate at the end here, people can find you guys at expeditionmarriage.org, or I've got your Instagram pulled up, expedition_marriage on Instagram. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So make sure you go and check out Chris and Jamie. They are so fun. Like I said, they just knit best friends out of all of their reels and all their videos, and it's fantastic. And make sure you go check them out. But thank you guys so much for joining me. This was so much fun. I can't wait to do it again sometime.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for being here. If this is your first time, thanks for checking out the Marriage Puzzle podcast. Make sure you go follow us on social media at Marriage Puzzle. And you can go check out our website, marriagepuzzle.com. And as you heard in the beginning of the episode, Julie and I are marriage coaches. We'd love to have the opportunity to interact with you on a couple-to-couple level. So you can go to our website and schedule a free discovery call with us, and we can see what we can do to help out your marriage. And as always, we look forward to you joining us next week, where together we'll work on marriage one puzzle piece at a time. See you later.